Live from the LA Zoo, it's the Nighttime Show. Today, our very special guest, Zoo Director John Lewis. With us, as always, our head writer, Matt Walker, our friend of the head writer, Mike Glazer, and sometimes announcer, Sexy. I'm the voice of the Nighttime Show, Mike Black, and, of course, to know him is to barely tolerate him, Stephen Kramer Glickman.
Wonderful. Well done. Wow, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and that is true. We have a very special episode today. We are at the LA Zoo, and we are sitting in the office of Zoo Director John Lewis. This place is so cool. You have such a cool office. I love it.
I agree.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Highlander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who, he's lived like thousands of years and he has all this cool stuff in his office. It's very similar.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like we could spend an entire day just kind of going like bookshelf by bookshelf in here. Like, it's just, you've got all sorts of cool stuff.
And now if he cuts off your head with a samurai sword, we'll know why.
Yeah, and it'll totally worth it.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And lightning strikes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit by lightning.
Yeah.
Let's start at the beginning. Where, John? Where did you grow up? Where'd you get started?
It was kind of split. I originally from southeast Missouri, about 90 miles south of St. Louis.
Oh, nice.
And so went there till middle school, and then high school. Literally moved to downtown New Orleans. So I went to high school in New Orleans and college in Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you? What were your parents like? What did they do for a living?
My dad was a mechanic when we were in Missouri, and then he got a job managing a foreign car parts store. And that's how we ended up moving to Louisiana.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. Did you have pets? Any pets when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah. We had lots of dogs and cats, and the town I grew up in was like 2,500 people, so we had a lot of access to the country. We, in 5 minutes I could be in the woods, and I spent quite a bit of time there.
Wow.
Chasing animals, smoking grapevines, all those kind of fun things.
Of course.
Can I just say, as someone who lived in St. Louis and went to Cape Girardeau for college,
there you go,
and tried those grapevines as well, I feel like I'm in really good company right
now.
now.
You probably went right through Fredericktown. That's where I grew up.
Absolutely did.
Yeah. You ever go to Johnson Shut-ins down there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I don't want to derail. I just
yeah, Johnson.
It's just where the river runs through these granite formations, and there are cliffs that you can jump off and dive off of, and it's just a great camp area. It's a wonderful place.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Where did you go to college? Where did you go to school?
Went to school at Northeast Louisiana. It's now called the University of Louisiana at Monroe, so I don't know if my degree is still good or not, but I went there. It's up in the northeast part of the state.
What did you study when you were in school?
Animal science. I was planning on going to veterinary school, and so I was taking pre-vet and animal science curriculum, and actually went to graduate school after graduating because they were building a new veterinary school at LSU. It wasn't open yet, and I either had to go to Texas A&M or schools in Alabama if I didn't go there. So I was waiting for that school to get started, and ended up getting my first zoo job at that location.
It seems to me like I've talked to I know a few veterinarians, and I know that at some point you get a chance to maybe you take a class that has to do with zoo animals.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like once you are in the zoo world, like you probably, if you could choose between being a veterinarian for dogs and cats, or being or working at a zoo, I feel like you'd want to work at a zoo. Like, it sounds like so much more fun.
I did, but it was really about money at the time. All through high school I worked for a group practice in New Orleans, and it was dogs and cats, and one of the vets actually specialized in cats, and one of his clients was a dancer on Bourbon Street that had a cheetah. So once a year we'd go down and give the cheetah a physical, and because I was underage, they had to yell out to all the women, "Young man coming in."
Oh my God.
And we'd give the cheetah an exam and then leave.
So she had a cheetah, like a cheetah at her home? Living with her?
In the club.
Oh my God.
I don't know where the cheetah went after hours, but it was in the club. Part of her act.
Similar to Siegfried and Roy.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
But I did that, and then when I got to college later on, I got another job with a veterinarian. He had a clinic in an old house, and cleaning his kennels and helping him with after-hours emergencies. My wife and I got this little one-bedroom apartment in the back free. And he happened to be the local zoo veterinarian. He was on contract. And one day the director came in. He used to come in periodically, and he was pretty upset. He had just fired somebody and asked me if I wanted a job. And I was in graduate school, and I said, well, I need money.
Yeah.
And I took the job as a primate supervisor and fell in love, and that started it. 44 years
So
now.
what does a primate supervisor do?
You supervise primates, yes.
Kind of like what's going on this podcast.
If it gets too technical,
exactly.
just let me know, But we had actually a fairly large group of monkeys and apes at that institution, and I was able, with my animal science background, primarily in nutrition, to make a difference in their life, and I started learning their natural history and what made them tick and what made them special, and it was just, it was like learning all over again. It was great.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. That's
And
incredible.
Are there a lot of individual traits in primates, just as there are, like, say, among us as people? Like, this gorilla likes this particular kind of food more than this other one, and the other gorilla doesn't like it? Like, is there a lot of that goes on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have both species-specific traits, but then you have individual traits, just like with us. Yeah, and you have to pay attention to both of those things.
Wow. Did you have you ever run into anyone? Because I know that there are lots of people that in the world that have tried to own monkeys or gorillas or chimps and keep them at home. Have you ever had to run into a situation like that?
Not with apes. I've had to deal with people that want to have big cats in their home and don't really have the capacity to provide good care, or think that there's quasi-tame and invite people for a fee to come in and be around them, and I've had to deal with that on a pretty regular basis. People that keep venomous snakes that they shouldn't have.
Wow.
And become a danger to their neighbors. We even had that here in LA. I wasn't involved, but our curator of reptiles was, and so yeah, but not so much primates.
There was my mom dated a guy back in the mid '90s who down in San Diego, who owned a big, huge monkey called Mr. Jiggs, and he was a monkey that had performed on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, wow.
And like a roller skating monkey.
Okay.
And so she dated this guy, and she didn't really like the guy, but she loved the monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so typical. And I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Every time I've come to the LA Zoo, I always find myself at where the primates are, and it's like the place you kind of want to just camp out and just watch them because they're so cool.
They are cool. I agree.
Can I ask, how do you gain their trust so that you can be around them?
Again, it depends on the individual, but you have to, be consistent. Have to be obvious, letting them know what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. But it's a great question, because one of the things, as I said, I've been doing this about 44 years, and so much now is done with training and building a relationship. Literally with some of the great apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, some of the orangs, we can ask them to present their arms now, and they'll let the vets take a blood sample with no anesthesia. It's all through training. Pregnant apes can be examined with sonograms and ultrasounds, without having to immobilize them. I mean, when I started, just about any time you had to put your hands on a large, dangerous animal, you had to anesthetize them. Now a lot of it can be done voluntarily.
Wow. Yeah. What other type of animals besides them are that you're able to do something like that with? Just comfortable.
It's runs the gamut of the animals that are in a modern zoo now, and even the reptiles a lot of times can be trained to allow access or to eat certain types of food, whatever. So a lot of training is going on now in your good zoos and aquariums.
So how did you make the climb from working at a zoo to being the zoo director? Like where did you go next?
Yeah. So this is my fourth zoo, and as I said, I started in Louisiana. I was there 3 years, and I got this opportunity to go. The state of Minnesota was building a brand new zoo. This would have been in the late 70s, and it's still there. It's the Minnesota State Zoo, just south of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I got hired as one of the original 5 curators at that institution. So I got to go there, and we literally were there at the beginning of building the zoo, bringing in all the animals, hiring all the original zookeepers. And I worked my way up to assistant director at that location. Then got an opportunity to be with my first director job in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at the John Ball Zoo. I was there for 17 years, and then came to this zoo, as I said, 15 years ago.
Wow, that is amazing. Do you want to stay here? Does this feel like home to you now?
It does feel like home. All of our kids are grown and gone now, so my wife and I really enjoy the area, and we got a great crew here at the Los Angeles Zoo, and we're doing good work, so it's a great place to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how has the zoo changed in your 15 years here? I mean, it's very different than it was when I was a kid. I used to come here when I was in elementary school, as a child, and it's very different over the, 40 years that I've been coming to this zoo.
Yeah, because Matt's 78 years old. I don't know if you know that. But, I mean...
It looks 74.
I know. But, I mean, you've worked as the zoo director at multiple zoos over a long period of time. How has it changed from what it used to be?
Well, one of the things that we face at any modern zoo is the fact that at this zoo, nearly 1.8 million people come through our door every year. Plus the animals that live here. We have, about 1,400 different individual animals. They're here all the time. So there's wear and tear on the facility. So we're constantly having to look at the facility maintenance, the care of the site, updating the habitats for the animals. New information comes along on how to care for the animals and what their needs are, so we want to update our programs, update the facilities. In the last 15 years, literally, we've spent about $180 million updating this facility. New entrants, new sea lion habitat, the new elephants of Asia, great apes, where the gorillas, well, actually all three, gorillas, orangs, and chimps all have new habitats, South American habitats. So we've really been doing a lot, and we have visions for more for the future.
Wow, that's so incredible.
Yeah, it's like I was in Beijing. I went to the zoo in Beijing back in, I think it was 2004.
Okay.
And I remember there, it was in the winter. So we go to the area where the big cats are, and none of them are outside because it's cold and there's snow on the ground. But then they had an area where you could go inside and see what looked to me like it was probably the old zoo before they built it out, where it's just like a cage and there's just tigers hanging out in a cage, and they're like maybe 10 feet away from me, and like you could feel their breath when they would growl.
Oh my God.
It was terrifying and amazing, but it was interesting to see how they just sort of took their old zoo and just were like, we're just going to build out from there and make it so they have a natural habitat now, which before was just kind of like they were in jail.
Yeah.
Like Mike Black and Mike Glazer, I don't know if you guys have ever been like within feet of a lion, but I got that experience a couple of years ago at a zoo with for a trip that we went on, and where we were just within feet, like just a few feet, and the lion made like a noise, like it wasn't a roar, it was like a grumble, and every molecule in my body was like, run. It was like I have never in my life, aside from the time I went parasailing, where my entire body was like, nope, get out of here. Like it's just my natural instinct being like, you are not supposed to be here. You need to get out of here. You're going to die.
I like that the molecules in your body overestimated how fast you could run compared to a lion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no way.
They're like, we got to at least try.
Go
down swinging.
I do believe Steve when he says that's the only time in his life where he ever wanted to run.
Real nice. Real nice.
These are your friends, right?
Yeah, these are my friends. Yeah, what kind of person am I? Oh my God. I got a question for you.
While Steven's crying, what was the first pet you ever had? Do you recall?
Yeah, it would have been a dog. Actually, the dog's name was Brownie. I remember very well. Yeah, she was
what kind?
She was just a mixed breed hound that was both a pet, and my grandfather and my dad hunted with her. She loved to hunt squirrels and rabbits.
Wow.
That's the most Louisiana thing I've ever heard in my life.
yeah, exactly.
While we sat there and ate crawfish. It was great.
There you go.
Is there any animal at the zoo that you would like to take home that you can? I'm sure you can't, but that you would love to just like hang out with in your living room?
No, I don't want to take them home, but I love what I learned from them. I did have growing up, and also early in my marriage, we had a lot of snakes at the house. I was really into reptiles, and After a third child was born, there was a debate whether the kid or the snakes could go in the basement, and I knew the snakes couldn't go in the basement. It was too cold down there, so I had to get rid of my snakes.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Tough choices.
The tough choices we have. Absolutely.
I like that there are a lot of goth kids listening to this that identify with it. I had to get rid of my snakes once. It's the worst.
So do you have a favorite animal here?
I have lots of favorites. Starting with the primates, of course, it's still primates. Siamangs, which is, the large gibbon that's got this incredible voice. I really like those. I worked with one in the beginning of my career that was just quite a character, and so I really enjoy that species. I work with clouded leopards, which we don't have here, but it's a really cool species found in Southeast Asia. They live in the trees more so than a lot of the other cats. And they're kind of a challenge to work with, not to keep them healthy and alive, but to keep a sustainable population. They were kind of hard to reproduce, so a lot of challenges. So that was another cool species that I worked with.
Are they like pandas where they just refuse to have sex? And you're like, just do it already, pandas. Just do it.
Come on,
What's wrong with you, pandas. Come on.
No, they try to have sex. The problem is there's a problem with males wanting to kill the females. So,
I can see that being a problem.
It's a tough thing. So now I'll get technical real quick. With a lot of the cats, they're solitary, right? And the only time they do get together is for breeding. And if you've ever seen any of, particularly on tigers, they'll show the male mounting the female and holding her by the scruff of the neck. Yeah. And that's really so she doesn't kill him. And then when the act is over, she jumps up and just slaps the snot out of him, and he runs off. So,
wow.
Unfortunately, with the clouded leopards, they're about twice as big as the females, and sometimes they slap back. So they're a tough species.
Jeez. What about bears? Do you have any? Do you have bears here?
We have one older black bear that was rescued years ago before I even got here. I have worked with grizzly bears, sloth bears as well. Yeah, so great.
Have you been around any not polar bears, but panda bears?
More just as a zoo visitor as well, but no, never worked with them directly.
Yeah, that's one. We were talking about this on the drive over. That what animals do well in the zoo and what animals do not do well. Yeah, for you, what have you noticed? Really sustains well here, and what kind of animals are don't adapt very well.
Yeah, and that's evolving. We talked about gorillas a little bit. Years ago, a little bit before I started, gorillas did not do well in zoos, and a lot of it had to do with diet and stress-related issues, how they were kept, how they were managed. They definitely didn't reproduce, and now we have to control their reproduction. They're doing quite well. In fact, one of the big issues we're dealing with is heart disease in gorillas, and trying to understand why they seem to have a tendency to develop that in later age. So the point I'm trying to make is that we do a collection plan that really identifies, what species needs some work, do we have the staff and the capability here to take care of that species, and is it appropriate for Los Angeles? Obviously polar bears would be a struggle here, and this zoo had polar bears for a number of years, and they actually lived beyond 22 years, which is an extended life. But, if we were ever going to do it again, we'd probably put them in a climate-controlled environment, not try to make them adapt to Los Angeles.
Yeah, I know there was a study in San Diego, because San Diego Zoo, I think, still has a polar bear, right? Or they have a few. And they were having a lot of trouble with polar bears pacing in the zoo, and that was becoming a real problem. Was that they were having a lot of trouble adapting, and same thing with their penguins. They were having a lot of trouble with penguins as well. And that does seem kind of like, if you're gonna have a zoo in a hot place, maybe you don't need to have polar bears. Also, polar bears, as Matt reminded me on the way over,
they're mean.
They're mean, and they're
efficient predators.
Yes.
Yeah,
they do.
I just heard a news story about a polar bear that killed somebody up in Alaska or somewhere. And they just found some bones, and they're like, "Well, not much you can do because you can't really outrun them, and you're just." Well, if they want you, then
and they also. This is just from what I've heard, but they also kill for fun. Is that true? Have you heard that? Am I just making that up?
I haven't heard that about polar bears.
All right, maybe I made it up.
Every day is the purge.
Every day is the purge.
Constant purge. Yeah. I actually had about the heart disease and everything. I came in here with 6 questions, and this is the first one. It's that I love the zoo, but as I grew up and decided not to Google why I felt a certain way, I became sad and angry that there was a zoo because it has so much stigma attached to it without me being educated about it.
Right.
But that's kind of a misconception when you're talking about things like discovering why gorilla hearts are getting disease, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's one of the things that I try to share with people now, that a big part of what's happening with zoos nowadays, and let me back up a second. So this zoo is accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. There's about 230 of us in that association. To show animals to the public in the United States, you have to be licensed by the USDA. There's 2,800 of those. So we feel that we're the cream of the crop. Mm-hmm. We go through an extensive accreditation program that looks at everything from how we make money, how we spend money, but more importantly, animal welfare, animal care, animal health. A big part of what we're doing now is developing technologies and skills and knowledges that can be used directly in the field. That's how this zoo and the San Diego Zoo saved the California condor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When they got down to 22 birds, we were the zoos that knew how to breed vultures and large birds of prey. All 22 came out of the wild into our institutions. There's close to 500 now. In fact, just last week, actually this week, there was a report of one spotted in Wyoming, first time in 100 years. Those are birds that were bred at our institutions.
That's incredible.
So we do that, even if we're not putting animals directly back in the wild, like the condors, like Arabian oryx, like Baja Peninsular pronghorn, like the yellow-legged frogs. If you saw that in the local media now, we just sent 500 back up into the San Gabriel Mountains.
You're breeding like thousands and thousands of frogs here.
Yeah. Just going crazy. And so we can transfer that information to the field biologists.
Well, especially like, I guess the old version of what people thought of a zoo was that it was like why aren't they
part of a circus?
Yeah, it was like part of it was like, why are they releasing them into the wild? But then you have animals like the okapi who were basically being farmed out of extinction for their bones to be used as cell phone parts in like certain parts of Africa and Asia, and it's like because of zoos they are repopulating the world with these beautiful, really cool creatures too.
Exactly, they are gorgeous,
and they really are neat too because like they release like an oil from their whole body's really neat. Like it releases like kind of like a. Am I right about that? Yeah. Like when you touch their skin, it kind of comes like this
like
really
natural
cool
waterproofing.
Yeah, they have like natural waterproofing. It's
like
really
Robbie
neat.
used to have.
Like Robbie used to have. Oh,
our old pal Robbie.
Oh, Robbie.
The exact same thing. And let me just say, don't feel too bad about the primate heart disease. 100% of the primates that I would raise would have heart disease.
Okay.
Every morning, come and get your Chris sandwich, boys.
That's right.
Chris sandwich. What are you doing?
So you started off in primates, and then do you sort of like do people in this industry start off working with a certain type of animal, and that's sort of like the path they're on? Like they become like a primate specialist, and that's all they work with? Is there like at any day at a zoo, are you like, okay, today you got the lions, you got the tigers, or like are they sort of locked into a certain area? How does that work?
And it really varies. I mean, all across the country, depending on the zoo. And keep in mind, this is a fairly large zoo, but there are zoos that maybe only have 10 employees. Wow. So just about everybody there will have to be a generalist based on what animals live at their institution. But in the larger institutions, a lot of times you'll have mammalogists, you'll have aviculturists that work with the birds, herpetologists with the reptiles and amphibians. So they do tend to specialize initially. Yes.
Wow.
Is the platypus the strangest animal?
Boy, that is a loaded question.
Don't worry, we're going to get attacked
no
by so many trolls.
There's no
trolls.
platypus in the room that can attack us if I say yes. I don't think it's strange. I think it's incredibly unique. That's the way I look at it.
Well,
that's a yes.
Yeah, that's got to be. What about?
I'm picturing now all the animals listening to the podcast.
Get on the mic. Yeah.
Like all the animals are listening to this going, okay. I was about to get upset, but he saved it at the last minute.
Saved it with the platypus. There's we were talking about this too, that if this zoo, there is another zoo that
Right.
Is it the old zoo? What's happening?
So,
what happened?
yeah,
Because there's another zoo. Because here's why I know. Because I went on a Hollywood hayride,
Right.
and they took us, and they were like, this is the old zoo. And you're like, there was another zoo?
Yeah.
So what happened?
There's actually been several zoos in the history of Los Angeles, and the old Griffith Park Zoo structure is still there. There's no animals there, but it's over close to where the merry-go-round is in Griffith Park.
Oh, wow.
And so the grottos and some of the old cages are still there. It's used as a picnic venue, part of the hayride. I think they do Shakespeare in the Park over there, and so it's still used as a public event space. But there are no animals. This zoo replaced that zoo, and it was built in the '60s and opened in 1966. So we just recently celebrated our 50th anniversary.
Wow.
Before that, there was another zoo called the Selig Zoo in East LA, which was actually privately owned, and a lot of the animals.
William Selig, who opened the very first permanent movie studio in Los Angeles, in Glendale, and then he moved to Lincoln Heights.
Yep.
And then he found at the time the most popular movies he made had wild animals in them, so he had the largest collection of animals in the 19-teens.
That's right.
And then opened a zoo along with his movie studio, so you could go to the zoo where they made movies.
Well, look, if we're going to mention that, we should also mention.
This leads to a question I was going to ask.
We should also then mention Monkey Island, one of my favorite weird facts about Los Angeles. There was an island. Do you know about this?
I don't know this
on Cahuenga Boulevard. There was an island. It was
an island on Cahuenga Boulevard.
There was. It was a fake giant metal volcano. It was two fake volcanoes that were built in the late 30s by two brothers as a roadside attraction, and they thought they would populate it with monkeys, and they had a moat around the island, and so they ordered 50 monkeys from Africa to be delivered to the Long Beach pier. And instead of 50 monkeys arriving, 500 monkeys arrived, all different shapes and sizes and kinds, and they knew nothing about monkeys, and they just released them onto this giant fake island, and they lived there for 4 years, and for 4 years people could pay 25 cents for a bag of nuts or monkey chow to throw at these monkeys. And I have one of the two pictures that were ever taken of Monkey Island framed and hanging in my living room.
That's
because I love how stupid it is. And the second that it shut down, all those monkeys went to different zoos and into the movies.
Wow.
So, okay, question for you about the Selig Zoo. Now, this is the thing. I just was at a presentation this weekend about old movie studios, and they showed photos that at the Selig Zoo they had these concrete statues at the entrance, and that they were lost for many years. And in the late 90s, they found them, and on display here they have two concrete lions from the Selig Zoo. But they said they also had donated concrete elephants that are not on display, and I want to know, are the concrete elephants like in a warehouse somewhere? Do you know what happened to those?
Yeah, we actually still have them. So there's actually 3 sets of lions. When you go out of this building, you'll see 2. Well, you can see all 3 of them that were restored and brought here, and we put them up. We have the elephants except for one and now I'm losing the name. It'll come, but at any rate, we have them. They're in different levels of being restored, and ultimately they will be displayed as well.
Oh, great.
Well, and cool. I'm totally missing the name, but apparently the last elephant, it's a series of adults and elephant calves, and one of the calves was in a TV comedian's front yard in Beverly Hills, and the kids used to play with it.
Yeah, I forget who it was. Like they mentioned that it was found in somebody's yard, and then they said like that he wanted to keep it, and then his wife was like, just get rid of this stupid elephant. And they found a bunch of other ones at like a junkyard in the Inland Empire somewhere. They were just like...
Exactly. Actually, my predecessor, Manuel Molinetta, found them with the help of one of our docent volunteers, and they brought them here.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a little tie-in to Hollywood history, which is great.
That's amazing. Okay, here's something that I feel like we need to bring up is every once in a while we have a situation happen. It happens in the news where someone falls into a cage or something, right, with some sort of animal,
right,
and like 9 out of 10 times they end up shooting the animal. I think we can all agree that, I mean, I don't know if you can agree with this, but the 4 of us agree that they should not be shooting the animal.
If somebody falls into a cage, it just belongs to that animal now. It's their pet.
Well, look, I mean, you want to try to save the person, but at the same time, that's not fair. That's like if me and Mike were sitting in a restaurant and someone was like, "Oh, here's the cake that you prepaid for," and then they gave us a cake, and then we started eating the cake, and then they came back and said, "Hey, you can't have that cake," and then they shot both of us. Like, that doesn't seem fair at all. Like, that's so unfair to the animal, right? Like, I mean,
they're just doing what animals do,
right? Come on, man. Like, so what's the deal with that? Why do they do that?
Well, obviously, you got to worry about the public safety, and it goes to, oftentimes the question I get from people is, it must be really difficult working with all those different species. And I say, no, that's the easy part. It's the people.
The people are the people are
all
the
of
ones.
us. We're the ones that are really difficult, and so it really varies. I guess the only thing I'll take tasks with, I'm not sure 9 out of 10 times, because there's been a lot of cases where individuals got into animal areas and they were able to be rescued without injuring the animal. In fact, a great case, and this goes to some of the training that I was talking about. A couple of decades ago, an infant fell into habitat at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. A female gorilla picked her up, and the keepers were able to coax her to bring the child back to them in the night rooms and hand over the baby, basically. So neither the gorilla nor the baby were injured. So
thank God for
there's
that.
lots of ways to do that, but when it comes down to it, you got to protect the public from themselves sometimes.
Yeah, man, the public.
We disagree.
Yeah, I know.
I was just like, what is it? The strong survive? Well, I mean, that human is not so strong.
No, I'm not sure, though. I think if that had happened at my institution, I'd have just shot myself. And I
Man, no.
I am not dealing with this.
No way.
That's
horrible.
Well, there's almost always, like every other year, a lady who tickles a bear at the zoo and gets caught by. Luckily, that's about as far as it goes. They usually get caught, and then the bear gets tasered, who really was doing nothing wrong. It was basically just ticklish and didn't like it, like any normal person is like, cut it out. And then everyone reacts, and it's like, but there's got to be a way to stop that lady from tickling the bear at the zoo. Because it's every other year.
There was a story where a guy, these guys were throwing stuff at they were throwing something at a tiger or at something, like for days and days they were doing this, and then finally the animal jumped up and took him out, and it was like, well, I always feel for the animals because people are what's the word? Idiots.
Stupid.
Stupid. Yeah.
Or uninformed.
Uninformed.
One of the problems now is that something like 80% of the public in the U.S. lives in urban areas. They don't live around wildlife anymore, and you don't even have to talk about zoos. At the major national parks, people get gored by bison because they're trying to get that selfie or get too close. They get too close to the grizzly bears, and then they're surprised they get hurt. And that's part of what we try to do at our zoo is reconnect people with wildlife. The animals that are here are not pets. We don't go to an effort to tame them or make them different in nature. We want them to retain their wild nature, and people need to respect that.
Absolutely.
Now, there was a trend for a while, especially with large primates, where it seemed like a lot of institutions were trying to teach them to communicate with sign language and other things, and it's been tried multiple times. Like I saw a documentary about one on Netflix.
Oh my gosh, we get it. You read. Holy cow.
Wow. Like, that doesn't really happen anymore.
You don't even do Netflix right. You find the nerdiest way to do that.
So, that doesn't really happen anymore, right? Like, we're not going out to try to find the next Coco and try to teach primates sign language anymore.
We're not here. I'm more impressed with the natural abilities of the animals. I want to understand why do they do the things they do, and how does that help them survive, in the wild. That's what I'm interested in, not what they can tell me about my own self.
Yeah. And now, what about celebrity zookeepers or celebrity zoologists? How do you feel about those folks? I mean, you have the Steve Irwins.
Did you ever want to be the next Jack Hanna or
you
Joe
telling
Embry?
me I'm not?
Oh, you definitely.
I mean, you're on this podcast. So
Yeah, you're on the spot.
pretty impressive.
I know. Who knows where I'm going from here, right?
Do you want to go on Conan O'Brien and bring animals to Conan O'Brien?
No, I don't, but I've got staff that can do that. I know Jack personally. In fact, we had him here. We recognized him at our Beastly Ball this year. And I know several of those folks that do, and they help us. They get the message across. They help, people understand what's going on with wildlife, and they tell the good news about good zoos and good aquariums. So I think they're good for our profession. It's not what I aspire to be, but I appreciate what they do.
Now, how much of your job is dealing with animals, and how much of your job is dealing with I gotta find out why we don't have any more popcorn, things like that? How much is the boring stuff of dealing with the human stuff, and how much is getting to deal with these cool animals?
What's the percentage?
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I don't spend a lot of time cleaning cages anymore.
Yes.
I did that years ago, and I can still do it. But what I do is I get to dream and envision, what can we do for those animals? How do I get the resources to do that? How do I get people to buy into that vision? How do I communicate with the mayor and the city council to get them to buy into that vision? That's a big part of what I do. I mean, there's a lot of administrative things. Some days I sign things, I don't even know why I'm signing them, but they told me I had to, so that's why I do it, but spreading the message, but doing these type of things, talking to community groups, talking to school kids when they come into the zoo. I had an experience a few weeks ago with some visitors, 2 grandparents and a granddaughter who was here from Cincinnati, and they'd come here specifically to see our okapi calf. And she knew all about okapis, and unfortunately that day the dad was out and mom and the calf weren't. And just talking to him, I got a chance to take him in the back and show him the calf, and the daughter was just,
nice.
Granddaughter was beside herself. So those are special moments, and we can make those moments.
That's amazing.
Now, who are some of the... sorry.
It's along the lines of that. Something I was really interested about, especially in 15 years here, is has the food changed because the Earth is changing so dramatically, whether it's global warming or whatever you think it is? How has your job been affected by the way the Earth is changing?
Food for the animals or for the people?
Well, I love popcorn, but I don't think anyone else cares about that. Yeah.
Actually, it's changed for both. So I'll start with the people, and I'll keep it short. We do quite a bit of local sourcing and try to be responsible. Our particular concessionaire has been very responsible in reducing most of the materials now that they serve food in is compostable, so we don't add it to the landfills.
And no more straws.
No more straws. We do that for a couple of reasons. Some of those straws find their way into animal areas, and if they eat it, they can't always pass it. But also because of the the issues with plastic. And our retailer just told us this week that they just reduced their plastic, single-use plastic, in the items they're selling in our gift store substantially. So we do a lot of things to walk the talk. With the animals, diets have changed a lot. Fortunately, now there are a lot of commercial diets that are actually available for zoo animals, everything from our flamingos to our great apes. But then that's augmented with fresh produce. I mean, they get all their food is human grade. Fresh produce, fish. We get meat products for the carnivores. So, there's quite a bit of things that we use.
That's fantastic. I was just curious, where is it coming from?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what is new in the zoo?
What
are some of the, I know there's a new giraffe.
There's a new giraffe. I know there's a new gorilla or monkey. Gorilla. Yes,
yeah.
a new gorilla.
Yeah, so we have a new giraffe calf that was born recently. We've over the years produced about 32 Maasai giraffes at this institution that have gone to other facilities. And Gia, a young female gorilla, came here. She was actually born at the San Diego Zoo. But she's a good example of another thing that's really major importance in our industry right now is that a lot of the animals here are managed by committees that are volunteers of people that work at our institutions that look at the genetics and the demographics, the age and sex ratios of the population. And the breeding plans and the transfer plans are designed to try to sustain that population at 90% genetic diversity for 100 years. Why? So they look and act like the animals they are, but more importantly, if there is ever a need or opportunity to put those animals back into the wild, they have the genetic capacity to survive. So she came here as part of that program to breed with our male Kelly, and hopefully they'll produce an offspring.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, here's one for you. what animals are more fierce than than most people would think they are?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Sometimes you're surprised by some of the birds, at least bird on bird. They're incredibly aggressive. And
Really?
you see these large aviaries, you think you could just put millions of birds in there, but it doesn't work that way. They can take each other out in no time. So birds can be very aggressive to each other, maybe not so much to people. All the big cats, jaguars, that's the one that constantly amazes me. I mean, obviously they're a big, strong cat, but those guys think. And so when you're working around them, you got to think too and be safe for their sake as well as your own sake. So,
really?
Jaguars are pretty incredible. Orangutans aren't fierce, but they're so daggum smart. When I was working with them directly, I was constantly being outsmarted by the orangutans.
Are they the smartest of the apes?
The line kind of goes, chimps mess with something until they either fix it or break it, and gorillas will just forcibly do what they want with it. Orangs will look at it for years, and then the first time they try it, they get it right.
Wow.
So
they look like Albert Einstein, so it kind of makes
well,
sense.
they're redheads, so it makes sense.
Because Matt's a redhead.
I see that.
Makes sense. Have you guys ever had any kind of rough interactions with gorillas because those guys are so big, they can knock anything down. I mean, they're just so huge.
Well, we have, as you know, we have our family group that we were talking about with Kelly and Ngia and Evelyn, and I forget the other gorilla's name right now. But we have two half-brothers that are in a bachelor group, and those two wrestle occasionally, and they'll beat each other up. And sometimes chimps, just their normal behavior, when they get into a fight, they don't just like slap and tumble. They bite and tear. And so they get pretty rough with each other, but we have to, depending on the type of wound that they might get, typically we just let it heal on their own, because if you pull them out and try to repair it, by the time you get them back in, now suddenly everybody's like, well, why are you so special? And now they get attacked again. So you kind of have to let them sort it out. Yeah.
Wow. Does that happen often? Like, are there a lot of fights in the zoo every day, like in different parts of it, or
no, it varies. With the chimp troop, it happens as the troop evolves. So you'll get a young guy that suddenly realizes he's older and maybe it's time to take over, and so he'll start pushing people around. And then if they don't like it, they push back, and you end up with a fight. And they have favorites within the troop. So.
Do giraffes fight?
Male giraffes would fight in
Have you seen giraffes fighting?
Yeah.
Look it up on YouTube.
I think so.
It's fascinating.
I just wasn't sure if that was real or not.
Just so you know, this whole line of questioning, Stephen played Mortal Kombat all night last night, and so now he just wants to know which animals can beat up which animals.
Right. Which animals are going up against which animals? Rhinos going up against. You guys have rhinos, right?
We don't.
You don't have any rhinos.
We don't have any rhinos. No.
Yeah. Darn it! Now you'll never know.
I had a situation where I got to meet a rhino or like touch
at a signing.
Yeah, like give a rhino. Yeah, no, come on. I had to give a rhino. It was like where you give it was like the wild animal park,
right?
I believe, and I gave the rhino some leaves. And then I turned around for someone to take the picture of me standing there doing it, and the rhino backed up and then rammed the gate that was between me and the rhino. Right. And the picture is literally me going, ah! While the rhino had slammed into the door. I was like, oh man, yeah, those guys are
they're pretty cool.
What would you say is like your big get recently as far as animals? Have you gotten like anything cool that you were like, screw you, San Diego, we got him? Did you ever get anything like that that you were like, we finally got the, spotted dovetailed alligator or whatever?
Yeah, well, one night we went down to San Diego and broke into the zoo, and no.
I was like, the podcast took a turn.
Panda, we got borrowed a panda. Yeah.
Is there competitiveness between zoos? Do you feel that?
Yes and no. There's not really competitors. Obviously, we work real close with San Diego and share information, share ideas. In fact, one of the things that's kind of fun is that when we get a new director or CEO in a zoo that comes in from the business world, they're totally shocked that they can get on the phone and talk to anybody and find out, what worked, what didn't work, sometimes is even more important, and what good ideas that they might have for their institution. So we're very cooperative. Obviously, we're cooperating with our breeding programs We share ideas on marketing. So it's not that competitive. It is in a fun way. We will tease each other about our accomplishments and what they didn't get. But it's a very cooperative profession.
Do you are there zoo conventions? Like, do you get together with all the other zoo directors?
Yeah, we have an annual Association of Zoos and Aquarium meeting. This year it's going to be in Seattle in September. Then we have a mid-year meeting as well, and there is a meeting in January of all the zoo and aquarium directors where we get together and learn and talk about ideas and make life miserable for the executives at our association.
Okay, so look, I don't want to turn this into a conversation about SeaWorld, but let's turn this into a conversation about SeaWorld for a second. Do you I know that they're they have literally lost an enormous amount of their following of people that come to their stuff, and they have done some great things, but they've also have had some trouble and stuff with certain situations. And do you feel like there are mammals that shouldn't be kept in zoos, or not in zoos but in parks like that? Are they considered a zoo?
Well, SeaWorld's a member of our association, and I think that's a tough one, but it goes to an important thing, and that is that there's nothing wrong with groups holding zoos and aquariums accountable for the animals that live here and trying to understand whether the species is appropriate for the space. But unfortunately, a lot of times they don't stick to the truth, and I'll have to defend SeaWorld in this case. They do incredible work both at their parks as well as in the field. Rescuing thousands of animals every year that are beached and breeding and releasing sea turtles, etc. So they kind of caught flat-footed. Some of the information was true and some of it wasn't. And unfortunately, they never got a chance to really balance that out and tell the true story.
Yeah, we're living in a world of that, right? Yeah, it's facts are not always the thing that people go to. It's most often it's retweets. Yeah, it's retweets and feelings.
And feelings.
Yes. And feelings are great, but facts are also very important. And I grew up in San Diego, and I used to go to SeaWorld all the time, and I would watch them repopulate different species that were going extinct or that were having all sorts of health problems, or they would take animals in that were not doing well and heal them up and fix them up and then send them back out into the world. And so tricky. But
and you're also just having animals in captivity. I understand the instinct of that's not right, but it's also there are things where you're presenting animals to people that they would never be able to see otherwise. They would have no chance whatsoever. Right. And showing the importance of that animal existing and that you're connected to it in the world, that it matters. People think of the rainforest in a very distanced sort of way, but when you're seeing, it's this animal's home, and this animal could not exist without it, it provides a major service.
Absolutely. And also a lot of that, that wild that those animals are from, some of the, monkeys and gorillas that are from certain, forests and stuff, those forests are gone. We destroyed them, So
it's almost like it's the least we could do.
Specifically, you and me, Mike.
Just our trips to McDonald's alone,
we've burned down
have probably
plenty
destroyed.
Of forests. Just you.
We've done a lot of deforestation. Yeah. But speaking of the world and everything, there are people that travel from all over the world to come here. If you were to send one message to them of there's one thing here you don't want to miss if you're here one day. Right. The one thing you have to do would be
go to the Los Angeles Zoo.
Well, no, I mean they've got their ticket. They're coming to the zoo. Okay, so while they're here, you don't want them to miss. Yeah. It would be what thing or what type of thing to do?
Well, I think going and looking at the different hoof stock, that's one of the things that this zoo is known for. The antelope, the hoofed animals, the goats, the sheep that we have at this institution. They're not going to see at a lot of institutions. Our reptile and amphibian group, very rare, and the staff there have done some incredible things with everything from little bitty tiny Iranian newts all the way up to Komodo dragons. I mean, they've just done incredible work.
Wow.
And then our elephant habitat, that's one that's like SeaWorld. We get a little bit of criticism about having elephants, but our elephant habitat is great. The staff does great work with them.
And that's been redone, because I remember when I was a kid, the elephants at the LA Zoo were very controversial.
Right.
And it's been completely turned around now. Like, you have this world-class elephant habitat.
It's gorgeous.
That is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A couple last questions before we wrap up.
And I got two, unless you got.
All right. No. Go ahead, Glazer. You have one, and then I'll.
Where does all the poop go?
Oh, we were asking about that.
Yes.
Seriously,
me and Matt
it's
were talking
legit,
about it
but
over
it's
here.
like there's
What
so many
happens-
animals.
Also, what happens to animals in the zoo after they pass away?
Like
What do
is-
you do with?
Oh, no animal dies here.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
this is a Highlander office. All the animals.
Yeah, remember? That's right. Well, I'll start with the poop first, and then I'll come with deceased animals. But most of our poop, manure, etc., goes to a compost site in Griffith Park, and it's part of the compost that's produced there, and so it gets recycled and reused. Now, there are some primate feces, some of the cat feces. There are public health issues, so they have to go to a landfill. But most of the poop goes there. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Animals that die here, and just for the record, every animal in a zoo is going to die at some point,
Yeah.
just like every staff member.
Well said.
Literally, I'm going to say everything because I'm trying to think of an exception, but everything's receives an initial necropsy by our veterinary staff. We have 4.5 full-time veterinarians, and I think 5 veterinary technicians and keepers that work at our animal hospital. They get an initial necropsy, which is like an autopsy for an animal, to see if we can find out, what happened to that animal, why did it die, did it have anything that we didn't know about. A lot of times tissue samples are sent outside of the zoo to a lab to do an in-depth review. That information is put into an international database that a veterinarian at any other zoo or even field biologists can get access to, so they know, the prevalence of heart disease in gorillas, or they know what the normal, red blood cell count is for a rare species. And the daily reports that all of our keepers write, every day they write a report that goes into an international database, again, that can be shared worldwide.
That's incredible. When it comes to diseases that animals can get, that humans can get, are there any hippos that have diabetes? Are there penguins that get frostbite? Are there giant turtles that get Alzheimer's? What
He's asking for a friend. He's not.
This is for a friend. It's not for
just
me.
For somebody I understand. Well, we do deal with what we call zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that can be passed from animals to staff because they need to be aware of it and protect themselves.
Sure.
And we do training with our staff to tell them how to protect themselves. That's part of the physicals that the animals get to make sure they don't have disease that can be transferred. Elephants could get tuberculosis, which can be transferred. So once a year they get a TB test. And once a year, all the staff at the zoo that works with primates and elephants, actually all the animals, they get a TB test as well.
Okay, question for you. Yeah. How do you do a TB test on an elephant? Because on a human, you prick the little skin and you look for the bumps.
Right.
How do you do it on an elephant?
Well, with the elephants, you actually put sterile saline in their trunk. They swish it around and spit it into a bag, and then that is
it's like a
cultured.
DNA? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Oh my!
that's right.
23andMe for an elephant.
And then the primates, when they get tuberculosis testing, the testing is done in the eyelid. That way, if they have a positive result when they come in and they're winking at you,
you can see.
stay back. Yeah, don't go close.
Whoa!
How often does that happen? Like, how often do you come up with, like, oh, this elephant has TB? Like, has that ever happened here? Or?
There was one elephant years ago that had TB. I can't tell you the exact date, way before I got here. We haven't had any primates. But it is, orangutans are, it's not unusual for them to show false positives because they react to the antigen that you're using.
Yeah.
So then you have to do an x-ray to make sure they don't actually have the tuberculosis. We haven't had any cases.
What about cancer? Do any of the animals, could they get cancer?
They do occasionally. I mean, one of the things that's happening a lot of times in our institutions that animals live longer than they would in the wild, and as a result, they develop age-related disease, whether it's cancer or renal disease or liver disease, et cetera.
Wow.
Is there like a geriatric veterinarian on staff, like somebody like you have a gerontologist for a human? But
they actually become that, over time. Years ago when the pot-bellied pigs, first started becoming popular, vets had to learn what to do with an old pig because a lot of pigs didn't live that long.
Wow. My mom has a pig. She has a kuni.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know those?
Yeah.
They're real weird. They got
Weird.
the little giblet things hanging from their mouth.
I
Looks
have
like
like
payas.
actually I wanted is the medicine that you can give these animals the same as human medicine? Is it 1-to-1 like that? And also, has there ever been any trying to use like THC or CBD at all to like help
dear
animals
God.
that are sore?
That are sore. Yeah, that's right. The medication.
You know what the pizza budget would be at the zoo if they had to do
That's right. That's right. Well, I don't know if I should go on or not, but
No, please do. Please.
the medications are all the above. I mean, there are veterinary medications strictly for animals, but in a lot of cases, as you can imagine, our vets are having to interpret what you would use in a domestic horse versus an exotic species. There are some human medications that also can be used in animals, and sometimes though the vets have to interpolate that, and then work out the doses.
All right, well, we need to wrap up this show because we have a tour of the zoo that we have to go and hop on a little tour. But hang
take
on.
a tour of the zoo.
Oh, God. Tell
What
me
a
about-
horrible
I'm
day.
so incredibly excited. I have one last question for you. 2 words. Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
How long until we have Jurassic Park? Where are we at with that?
Well, I don't know if we're going to have Jurassic Park, but there are works in going on, to try to bring back things like the northern white rhino that have disappeared. But there are, germplasm in freezers and zoos around the world, so there might be a way to bring those rhinos back.
Oh man!
So
What about woolly? I've heard there's some woolly mammoth talk about them trying to bring the woolly mammoth back by mixing it with elephants.
then you
Yeah.
just get snuffleupagus.
If only.
You say that like that's the worst thing that could happen. I would love a
I'm being dead
snuffleupagus.
serious, guys. We're in the
He's
zoo
trying,
director's
he's trying,
office.
he's
We're
trying.
asking him a question about Jurassic Park.
That's right.
All right.
He is serious.
I'm trying to figure. We're in Los Angeles, where they wrote it.
I'm waiting for
based
Jeff
on
Goldblum
facts.
to break into the office and start chewing us out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one last question.
Yes.
On a serious
Ooh.
note, what can individuals like us do to help make sure that the zoo is moving forward and that it's a good place that we can come for the next 100 years?
Right. So obviously visit the zoo. Send us, we have social media, we have Twitter, we have all the new social medias as it evolves. Respond to the podcast, tell us what you like, what you don't like. We do listen because it's important, because sometimes we learn, but sometimes we need to inform. So either way, we want people to give us feedback. Get involved with conservation activities too. And when you make purchases, think about what that purchase is going to do. Is it going to take down the rainforest? Is it going to clog a stream? But just think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
John Lewis, thank you so much for having us down here to your office and answering all of our absolutely ridiculous and wonderful questions. We love you, man. We love this zoo. And for our fans and people that listen to the show, it's at LA Zoo on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and the Los Angeles Zoo on YouTube. But just use hashtag LA Zoo, to tweet your pictures and your posts posts and post stuff and post pictures and tag and follow. Also, you can always get me at Stephen Glickman, STPHEN Glickman on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'll be posting video from us messing around, walking around the park today and checking things out. Mike Black, where can people find you?
On all social media at Mike Black Attack. I also do a fellow podcast or another podcast in the world called the Power Pals.
Sure.
Not safe for work.
This is Mike Glazer. I'm at Glazer Boo Hoo Hoo on all social media. And DM me your thoughts on Elon Musk.
And what about you, Matt Walker?
You can find links to everything at funnymat.com, and if you want to debate with me about whether orangutans are actually the greatest primates, I will take those suggestions at mattwalkersucks.com.
Absolutely. John, do you have any social media, any way that people can get a hold of you, or you want me to keep it through the handles?
Probably just keep it through the handles, but thank you guys for being here. This was fun. Thank you for sharing information about the zoo to your listeners. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We love this place, and we're going to go head out into the park and go have some snacks. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. Thanks a lot. Come to the zoo.
Please.